Flight Boss, bitch, you know, for sure. You're now listening to the Mount Evan Terry Smooth, Flight Boss, the Archangel Uriel, and I'm here to carry out God duties and motherfucking responsibilities. And right now, you know, sometimes I just sit back and wonder and just think and see how lost people really are. And it's like, I have to sit back and ask myself, am I tripping? You know, for real, like, am I going too far? Because you come across very smart people from day to day too. And like, for an example, now, and this is for me and my soul group. This video is for us, you know what I'm saying? It's like, for real. We put ourselves in the world and things of that nature. And then we come across people, right? And then you will say things like astrology and people's head go crazy and things of that nature. But then you got to really sit back and be like, why do this person think like this in the first place? Because it's not even that deep how someone is trying to put it. Now, for an example, sometimes you gotta ask. Sometimes we in the world of lostness and dumb motherfuckers. So us as a soul group, sometimes you gotta look at the motherfucking person you next to and just ask them the most dumbest question in the world. How we get night and day? Sometimes you gotta do that. Like, sometimes you gotta do that because, like, look, you will really say that. You will ask a person that, right? And then bring up astrology, and a person will look at you silly. They'll look at you crazy, as if this is something different. You see what I'm saying? So, sit back and ask this motherfucker, like, how do we get night and day? Whatever answer the motherfucker come up with, that's astrology. So, we shouldn't feel bad that person just rather stay at that level of consciousness and choose to put astrology somewhere else where astrology is simply something everybody do every day. Now, and this is why I say astrology predates all science and all religion, and you can't escape it. You have to presuppose astrology. You see what I'm saying? Because sometimes you gotta be like, is we tripping? We ain't tripping, right? Nah, not my soul group. Like, we gotta really, like, well, after a person answer that question, we gotta really break it down. We gotta be like, you know what? You don't see how from day and night, the transition from day and night, you don't see how that affects us from civilization to civilization, and as civilizations to civilization go on, we develop and add more aspects to what we initially first start observing. Like, you don't think that affects society in any way? You don't see how something could be. You don't see how a string of events can add on to the simple concept of night and day? You don't see the concept of night and day through all literatures? You don't see that? Where do you think that came from? So people will still argue, oh, they get lost and be like, oh, that ain't astrology, that ain't this, that ain't that. Then what is it? Last time I checked, it was the measurement or observing a celestial body. So that's gaining knowledge of the stars. If you don't want to call it a star now, based upon you want to argue me, call it whatever you want to call it. It's a celestial body. You don't think we came up with calendars and days and dates from that? You don't think that's how we came up with that shit? Like, you don't think that's affecting us in some type of way? Weird. I know I ain't tripping. Now, if you want to break it down to the most simplest form, I don't really give a fuck about none of the names that anybody call these light forms. Now, I call it a light form just for the sake of people understanding what the reference I'm pointing to. I call it stars just for people to understand what I'm pointing to. Once we get lost into particles, photons, and lights and spectrums and things of that nature, listen, all I'm going to tell you is that's just another shape and form of a star. If you want to call a star a form of energy, then you can. But energy got limitations to it. The term and the phrase in which y'all ring around from what scientists taught y'all about energy, that has limitations to it. To the point that anything that's less dense or non-physical, aka a light body, which is sound or light or something like gas, y'all want to correlate that to the spirit. So, you know what I'm saying? Y'all still under some type of indoctrination by scientists and the Yang realm. Marissa, Pick that up and hang that up. Pick the phone up and hang it back up.
Okay.
Thank you. So, you know, yeah. See, when you start kicking some shit, that's you get attacked. You gotta get attacked and shit like that. But, you know, you motherfuckers can't stop shit. You know what I'm saying? Because I got spiritual soldiers here now. But for the most part, you know, diving into the lostness and scientists and stuff like that, you're still just on the opposite end of the indoctrination. You see what I'm saying? So to the point that they make you believe that something is such and such and such. So then when you get the terms astrology, which astro, knowledge of the stars and things of that nature, when you get those terms, you have to run back to the people who are teaching you everything. So you have to run back to a book, run back to some type of literature, where whoever wrote these books did the same thing I'm doing, going outside and observing. So when I say, like I said, y'all get lost in the physical, I like to say I call everything stars. So scientists on the broadest level, they call that energy, you know, for the most part. But to me, those are all bodies. Energy is something that can be felt. And it's unseen and it can be seen. It's non-physical to physical. That's how we constructed the energy realm. So the most non-physical thing you can see in the energy realm, scientists are trying to break it down to atoms, particles, and all this kind of shit. These are just things that we engineered as spirits to take as forms. And the lighter the form is, the lighter the energy is. I call it all stars. The lighter the star is, the more inexperienced a spirit can take. Now, an inexperienced spirit I will call it like a young spirit. So in these realms, when we talk like fire realm, this is beyond that realm. Now in this realm I'm talking about right now is things that's happening real rapidly and fast. So your imagination is, your spirit is happening fast. So the bodies you creating is happening fast. So what y'all call as dying or life, think of that as every second. But every second you're developing a more hyper body for yourself. So death and life is nothing but transformation. You see what I'm saying? So when y'all get into that, don't get lost. So it's this transformation. So the lighter the body, the faster the transformation. So for the most part, this is where as a spirit, the ideas that you're coming up with, which is the world that you're coming up with, is the first form of body. The dream and imagination, that's your first form of body you can take and start to live life in that world. You see what I'm saying? This is where we get the concept of ideas take lives of their own. Because your ideas is the world you create from with your own spirit, and other spirits could come live in that world and start to manifest into lower densities and create other scientific bodies, which is blood cells and cells that we created and we engineered. When you hear things about like the reptilians and stuff like that, and Palladians, they was involved with this shit and all this shit too. This was like the first level of life. Us when we was living in just the brain space. And we was developing all the mental attributes to ourselves before we got to the animalistic nature. So once you start to hear in religion or any ancient things start talking about animals and stuff like that, this is where the concepts that these are lesser forms that we start to take, lower forms that we take to come into more density realms of realities. See what I'm saying? And then we get more higher evolved the more we take. So the more lower density forms of animalistic bodies we take, the more higher evolved that lower animalistic body can look like. So you look like a human, a dragon. So motherfucker, you are a higher evolved animal, motherfucker. So, you know, as motherfucking spirits, we just create, I call it all stars, from the smallest particle to the largest, from sound, gas, whatever. We create these forms in the bodies, and the lighter the body, the faster our imagination come and go, or the faster our creation die, or life, or I call it transformation. Transformation. And then once we do that so many times, with all those experiences, we learn how to create bodies that can sustain a longer experience within ourselves. And then that's when we get more denser forms that we can inhabit. You know what I'm saying? So when we look at lights and we talk about shadow and darkness and shade, we're in an overall dense body. You know what I'm saying? And this the denser the light, the more it don't reflect light. That's how you got planets like Saturn. That's how you got people like you that cast off shadows. You think shadow is darkness. Look, if darkness, true darkness, you can't see darkness. That's just another form of a light. And when you put all the lights together, it looks like that color that we call black or dark. But that's just another color. That's what y'all have to understand. There's broader colors, frequencies. You see it. Do you understand that? It's not blank. You see it. So when you see this phoresic light or another light, that's just another layering of a light. So that light came from a light. You came from a light. A body. We all got light bodies. Now, depending on how dense this light body is, it's a body of light, period. Now, we are in a condensed prism. So when you die, your body could turn like crystal-like. But if you contain your spirit into all the lights, aka what you're consciously aware of, what you paying attention to, and if it's some bullshit, then your spirit gonna always like to take the shape and forms of the way those lights was emitting and the way those lights was reflecting and relating to each other. So you keep coming into those realm of realities and keep getting locked in those prisms, those crystals, those crystal bodies, those light bodies, those, you know what I'm saying? These bodies, these is carbon bodies, y'all, and I'm developing into a crystal body. I'm gonna get all the science, I'm gonna get to that too also. But for the most part, all these forms of bodies is just different densities of light. So when I say, like, so when y'all hear me say shit like everything is stars, I mean that shit. So don't look at me like, oh, he's just an uneducated person. Oh, he's just a person who smoke a lot of weed, he don't know anything, or something like that. No, for all my new atheists or scientist people or whatever like that, believe me, I didn't look at what y'all into 1,000 times. This ain't no, I'm not no type of person that's like, man, fuck all that shit, this is what we gotta look at. And it's not. No, the reason I come to my conclusions is because I get into the shit that y'all into. And I just like to see the common sense out of everything. And when you use your motherfucking common sense, you have to sit back and be like, damn, am I tripping? Because you end up realizing 99% of the world ain't using their goddamn common sense. So I say this again. As us, as a soul group, are we tripping? I know I ain't tripping. Even when you look at motherfucking, it's like I was comparing to how y'all want to correlate gravity or things of that. It's all a spectrum of small and large, micro, macro. So something is always going to be larger than something else. Something is always going to be smaller than something else. So you have to understand realms of realities. So when I say look at the shit like the planets and the sun, the reason why it's not crashing into what we into, because I said they're light bodies. But in the realm of reality that they are in, they are very dense. You see what I'm saying? Because they wouldn't even be able to give off that much light if they didn't go through a lot of transformations in that shape and form when the spirit inhabit these bodies. You see what I'm saying? For an example, you think you're very dense because you here, because you don't give off light. Compared to you. You see what I'm saying? Compared to you. Now, a smaller life, and I even go as far as going to a cat and a dog. A lot of times, they're not seeing your shape and form. Especially a bird. They're not seeing your shape and shape and form. They're seeing you like if you, let me see. Let me how I get the best way to explain this in y'all physical terms. Like infrared goggles. Or like if you try to see a person through radiation or heat sensory, right? A bird will see you like that. You see what I'm saying? And a cat will kind of see you like that and see half of your shape. Like if you was to get into a cat's brain and see through a cat's eyes and look into this reality, the way these lights is hitting up, the way the light is reflecting and reacting to, and how the cat is reacting to these lights, you would be like, what the fuck is that? See, to a cat it's normal, but you already in a brain conscious. So a lot of times what birds and them be seeing is the shit in you, like the source, those bodies, the vortex bodies that spinning and shit. So you look like that. So when you looking at something in infrared, that's what you actually seeing. You seeing the source of something, and how much source it is how much heat is gonna impact or whatever. But the source impacts on the inner organs and the fluids. So that's what the radiation and the infrared is able to pick up. But it's picking up the more natural frequency vibration of it. So that's what we seeing when we're looking up inside of the being we in. We seeing the organs of the source. So for example, your heart beating, to you, that's just a heart. To the blood cells in you, that's like a frequency vibration giving off a whole bunch of sound, like doom, 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 doom. And them in the universe, to them, that's just a whole bunch of different creations and shapes and forms. You see what I'm saying? And then that contraction expansion itself, that doom, 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 that's a light to them. You see what I'm saying? That's light. that light may be a different kind of light than the light how the mind do it. The mind may do it in a different kind of light. So what we saying is dark and oh, y'all get confused in that shit. You know what I'm saying? And this is why astrology predates all science and religions and all literature and ancient texts, because this is where they got it from. The stars, men and women didn't create shit. They only discovered it. So they only discovering what's already here. So before we get lost into what people are discovering, we have to sit back and use our common sense and be like, okay, no, we are just figuring out new ways on how to use what the fuck is already here. You see what I'm saying? Flight boss, bitch, goddamn air,